Welcome to Dialogue. We are back with another deep dive into the Jeffrey Epstein case. And this conversation, well, it's a direct response to questions you, our listeners, have been sending in. How could a network this massive, involving so many powerful people, operate in the open for so long without being completely dismantled?
It is the central question, isn't it? I mean, people can get their heads around the what, the trafficking, the island, the names, but the how feels impossible. It feels like it defies the laws of social gravity.
It really does. It feels like a glitch in the matrix if you look at it in isolation. But the perspective we want to explore today, it suggests that to really understand Epstein, you can't look at the case in a vacuum.
You absolutely cannot. You have to look backward.
Layback.
If you see Epstein as this singular, unique monster, nothing makes a whole lot of sense. But if you see his operation as a modern application of an ancient formula, then everything just snaps into focus.
So Epstein wasn't a glitch.
He was a feature of a system of control that has existed for thousands of years. We're talking about the mechanics of control.
So we're essentially acting as archaeologists today. We're digging up the history of elite blackmail to understand the present. And it sounds like there's a specific blueprint for this, an architecture that's remarkably consistent.
It's shockingly consistent. We call it the core formula, and it's a linear progression that you can spot in basically every major blackmail operation in history.
Okay, so walk us through it.
It all starts with access. You have to get close to the powerful. You get in the room.
The first step.
Then that access leads to indulgence. You provide the target with what they want, usually something illicit, something they can't get through normal channels.
And once that indulgence happens,
it leads to compromise. They've crossed a line. They've done something that puts them at risk.
But the compromise itself isn't enough, is it?
No. That leads to the most crucial step: documentation. If it's not recorded, it didn't happen. At least not in the world of leverage. That documentation creates leverage. And the leverage, in the end, is what ensures protection.
So access, indulgence, compromise, documentation, leverage, and finally, protection. That's the cycle.
That's the entire machine. And it's vital to remember the distinction between the tool and the actual objective here.
Right. Sex is just the mechanism.
It's the tool. Power is the objective. We get so distracted by the lurid details of the indulgence, but for the people running these networks, that's just the bait. The goal has always been and will always be control. Political, social, financial control.
Okay, so let's unpack this by going all the way back.
Yeah.
When we talk about the ancient roots, we have to start with the Roman Empire. And I think many of us have this sort of Hollywood image of Roman parties, but it wasn't just debauchery for its own sake, was it?
Not at all. In the Roman Empire, emperors and the elite class used sexual secrets, debt, illicit affairs. They used it all as a primary mechanism of governance. It was strategic.
So it was a tool of the state.
Absolutely. Rome ran on two things: patronage and reputation. If you could destroy a rival senator's reputation, you completely destroyed their political viability.
And they had systems in place for this. It wasn't just based on luck or gossip.
Oh no, it was systematic. They employed informants delators who were embedded in powerful households. Slaves, servants, even disgruntled family members. Their job was to listen, to watch for what they called moral crimes.
But here's the key part, right? The selective enforcement.
That is the absolute key. Rome had very strict moral laws on the books, but they were almost never enforced equally.
So if you were loyal to the emperor, your, let's say, indiscretions were overlooked.
Completely ignored, maybe even facilitated. But the moment you became a political rival, the moment you stepped out of line, suddenly those old laws were enforced with brutal surgical precision.
So the goal wasn't justice.
The goal was never justice. The goal was control. You keep that knowledge in your back pocket until the perfect moment to play the card and neutralize a threat.
Let's move forward in time a bit to the medieval period. The setting changes from the forum to the royal courts. But the game seems to stay the same. The stakes, though, they seem even higher because of this powerful concept of honor.
The medieval era introduces this deeply psychological element that's fascinating. You see, in that world, honor wasn't just a social nicety. Honor equated to survival.
If you were a noble and you lost your honor,
you lost everything. Your lands, your titles, your allies, maybe even your life. So the leverage gained from blackmail was absolutely lethal to your entire existence.
And the methods evolved as well. We start to see a more formalized use of spies disguised as servants.
The domestic stash has always been the greatest intelligence network in history. That's a constant. But in the medieval courts, we also see the weaponization of the mistress.
Right. They weren't just lovers. They were assets.
Often, yes. A beautiful woman would be placed near a powerful man, specifically to gather pillow talk, to learn his weaknesses, his debts, his fears, and then report that information back to a rival faction or to the crown itself.
And this all connects back to the power of the church at the time. Religious authority was used to weaponize shame.
It provided the entire moral framework for the blackmail. The definition of sin was so rigid and so pervasive that almost everyone was guilty of something. If you can create a standard of behavior that is fundamentally impossible for a human to meet, you ensure that everyone is compromised from the start.
Which makes everyone controllable.
An incredibly effective control mechanism.
Okay, let's fast forward to what really feels like a turning point in this history. We're looking at early modern Europe, and specifically Venice, 15th to 17th centuries. This seems to be where kompromat goes from being personal intrigue to actual statecraft.
Venice is the laboratory. It is where modern intelligence, as we know it, was essentially invented. They perfected the art of kompromat.
How so?
Well, the Venetian state had a realization. They realized that information was a commodity, just like spices or silk. So they didn't just wait for secrets to bubble to the surface. They went out and actively harvested them.
And a prime location for that harvesting was the city's famous brothels, correct?
They were. The Venetian state systematically monitored brothels to catalog the sexual deviances of their own nobles and, just as importantly, of visiting foreign dignitaries. They wrote it all down. They created archives of secrets.
But then they had another realization, a sort of aha moment that changed the game entirely.
This is the genius of the Venetian model. They realized that the best secret isn't one you stumble upon or steal.
It's the one the victim helps you create.
Exactly. That is a profound psychological shift. If I catch you doing something, that's one thing. I have leverage. But if I facilitate it for you, if I create the environment and you willingly participate, then I truly own you.
Because you can't expose me without exposing yourself.
Precisely. It ensures silence better than any external threat ever could. You become your own jailer. Your own complicity is the lock on the cell door.
We see a version of this mature in the French royal courts as well, with the so-called Madame networks.
Oh, France turned social blackmail into a high art form. At Versailles, sexual access was currency. It was directly traded for political favor, for titles, for influence. And the madames who ran the high-class salons and brothels, they were effectively intelligence hubs.
They knew everything.
They knew who was sleeping with whom, who owed money, who had secrets. And in France, we also see the growing importance of physical leverage, actual letters and diaries.
The physical proof.
Yes. You have to remember, in an era before digital anything, a love letter written in a moment of passion was a ticking time bomb. It could be held for years, for decades, waiting for the right moment. Social blackmail became a currency you could use to purchase real power.
So we've established this is ancient. It's almost foundational to how power operates behind the scenes. But as we move into the British Empire in the 20th century, the scale just explodes. It goes global.
The British Empire is a fascinating case study. I mean, on one hand, they ruled half the world and needed a way to control their own administrators thousands of miles from home. But they also had this very specific vulnerability right in the heart of their own elite class back in London.
And the classic example of that has to be the Cambridge Five.
The Cambridge Five spy ring is the textbook case. You have these high-born establishment British men, educated at the finest schools, who were successfully recruited by Soviet intelligence during the Cold War.
And the hook the Soviets used, in many cases, was targeting their homosexuality.
Yes, which was not only socially ruinous at the time, but a criminal offense in Britain. The Soviets brilliantly exploited the incredible arrogance of the British elite. These men genuinely believed they were untouchable. Their class, their status, it was a shield.
That seems to be a recurring theme, doesn't it? The belief among the elite that they're immune actually makes them more vulnerable.
It creates a massive blind spot. If you believe the rules don't apply to you, you act recklessly. You engage in behavior that leaves you wide open. The Soviets saw that arrogance, and they used it like a handle to grab hold of these men.
But the British were playing the same game in their colonies.
Oh, absolutely. In their colonial administration, they systematically used files on sexual misconduct to control officials stationed abroad.
So if you were a British governor in India or an officer in Africa and you had an affair, you could be sure that London knew about it.
They made it their business to know. And here's the crucial part. They wouldn't fire you. That's not the point. If they fire you, they lose an asset.
They keep the file.
They keep the file. And if you ever hesitated to follow a particularly brutal order, or if you ever developed a conscience about what the empire was doing, that file would quietly be placed on your desk. The threat of exposure was used to ensure compliance.
It's the difference between a penalty and a leash. A penalty ends your career. A leash keeps you working, but under someone else's control.
That's a perfect way to put it. It is a leash. And as we move deeper into the 20th century, that leash becomes industrialized. And for that, we have to talk about J. Edgar Hoover.
Right, the FBI. This is where blackmail becomes truly institutionalized in the United States. Hoover's legendary secret files.
Hoover represents that critical shift from ad hoc, case-by-case blackmail to institutionalized, systematic leverage as a tool of government. He maintained personal files on everyone. Politicians, activists, celebrities, judges, even presidents.
He knew their secrets.
He made it his mission to know, and he specifically focused on sexual behavior.
And the terrifying thing about Hoover was that he rarely had to actually publish the files, did he?
Almost never. That's the art of it. It's psychological warfare. Whether the blackmail was ever used directly or not, the fear of the files was more than enough to enforce loyalty and silence dissent.
I've read stories of him meeting with a politician and just casually mentioning some tiny private detail.
Exactly. A detail he couldn't possibly know unless he was listening in. That politician would leave the meeting knowing, with absolute certainty, that Hoover owned him.
It's the panopticon effect. You always behave because you have to assume you're being watched.
Precisely. And while Hoover was perfecting this domestically, the Cold War intelligence agencies, the Stasi, the KGB, Mossad, they were normalizing this as a standard instrument of state power on the global stage.
The Stasi in East Germany was particularly terrifying.
The Stasi took it to its logical extreme. They had kompromat on millions of their own citizens, systematic sexual surveillance. It wasn't just for controlling elites, it was for controlling an entire population.
And the KGB, of course, perfected the honeypot.
The honeypot became standard tradecraft. You place an attractive agent in the path of your target, you let nature take its course, and you make sure the cameras are rolling. The KGB weaponized sexual footage. They moved blackmail from being a tool for a personal grudge to being a routine part of governance. It was just how business was done.
So we have the state agencies. But there's another major player in this field, especially in the 20th century: organized crime, the mafia.
The mafia understood this dynamic better than almost anyone, and they had a very, very clear-eyed view on the difference between bribery and blackmail.
Walk us through that thinking. Why is one so much more effective than the other for them?
Okay, so a bribe is a transaction. You pay a politician, they do you a favor, but next week they can come back and ask for more money. Or a rival can offer them a better deal. A bribed official is essentially a rental.
But a blackmailed official.
A blackmailed official is property.
That's a chilling word. Property.
But that's how they saw it. It's a much more stable asset. If I have a video of you or proof of a crime you committed, you stay bought. You can't ask for a raise. You can't threaten to quit. The mafia used its control of things like brothels and illegal gambling dens to systematically compromise officials and politicians.
It creates a web of mutual exposure.
If I go down, you go down with me. That's a powerful motivator.
This brings us forward to the 1980s and 90s, in a case we have to discuss: the Franklin scandal. For our listeners who might not be familiar, this is often cited as the direct precursor to the Epstein case.
I think the Franklin scandal is probably the closest analog to Epstein in modern American history. On the surface, it was about a collapsed credit union in Nebraska, but it quickly spiraled into these horrific allegations of a nationwide child trafficking ring that involved very powerful political names in Washington, D.C.
And the features of the case are eerily similar to what we see with Epstein.
The pattern is identical. You have allegations of trafficking minors. You have powerful political and financial names implicated. You have widespread witness intimidation. You have claims of evidence being destroyed or disappearing. And crucially, you have aggressive media suppression of the story.
And regardless of the final disputed claims or the legal outcomes, what's really important for our conversation is the institutional reaction to those allegations.
That's what we have to focus on. The institutional reaction matched these historical patterns of cover-up perfectly. The system closed ranks, the wagons were circled, the narrative was contained. It's a stark lesson in what happens when these networks threaten to expose the real machinery of power.
The machinery fights back to protect itself.
Every single time.
Which leads us, finally, to Jeffrey Epstein. We've laid out the historical groundwork. We see all the different components. Epstein seems to be the moment where all these threads, state intelligence, organized crime, elite finance, all get knotted together into one figure.
Epstein is the modern hybrid. But first, I think we have to properly define his role. The media often portrays him as this singular mastermind, a kingpin. That's the wrong framework.
He was more of a connector, a service provider.
Exactly. He was a wealthy, well-connected intermediary. His core product wasn't trafficking, it was access. He provided access to politicians, academics, celebrities, and he provided the venue, the island, the ranch, the townhouse, a space where the normal rules of society didn't apply. He created plausible deniability for his powerful clients.
So he's the Madame of the French court, but with a 727 jet.
He's the Madame, he's the Venetian spy master, and he's the mafia fixer all rolled into one. The model didn't change, but it evolved with the times. What changed was the technology and the global reach.
Right. Digital documentation.
High quality, easily hidden video cameras everywhere. Then you have global finance, which allows vast sums of money to move instantly and untraceably across borders. And finally, you have jet set mobility. He could be in Paris, New York, and a private Caribbean island in the same 48 hours.
But the core, the absolute core of the operation stayed the same.
The core never changes. Sexual compromise is a tool for elite protection. Epstein brilliantly combined the logistics of organized crime, how to move people, how to launder money, with the techniques of state intelligence agencies, the surveillance, the infamous Black Book.
And he wrapped it all in this protective layer of elite social insulation.
That insulation is the key to why it lasted so long. He was at the galas, he was at the scientific conferences, he was donating to the universities and hospitals. To the people who mattered, he wasn't an outsider, he was one of them. And that made him effectively invisible in plain sight.
Which brings us to the big why. Why are these networks so resilient, so hard to destroy? This is the heart of the questions we've been getting. Why did no one stop him? Why is the full client list still hidden?
I think it comes down to a concept we can call the mutual destruction principle.
It's a standoff, like in Cold War thriller.
It is exactly that. It's the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, but applied to a social and political circle instead of nations. Everyone involved holds career-ending, life-destroying dirt on everyone else.
So if one person breaks the code of silence,
the entire house of cards collapses. And we're not talking about a slap on the wrist. Exposure means total legal ruin, complete social annihilation, and the collapse of the institutions they represent. In that context, silence becomes the only rational choice for everyone inside the network.
even if you despise what's happening, speaking out means your own destruction. So you stay quiet.
Rational self-preservation becomes the enemy of justice in this kind of system. And that's before you even get to the benefit for the gatekeepers.
The institutions surrounding the network, the banks, the big law firms, the media.
Think about it. They're all getting something out of it. They're earning massive fees managing the money. They're gaining access to incredibly powerful networks through these connections. They're avoiding scrutiny themselves. There is a zero incentive for a major bank to expose a client like Epstein when he was flying high.
The incentive is to facilitate and normalize him.
Until the moment it becomes a public relations liability. And only then.
And what about the people who do try to speak out? We've seen the fate of whistleblowers in cases like this.
The historical pattern is brutal and consistent. Whistleblowers are systematically isolated, their careers are destroyed, their credibility is viciously attacked, often using any personal dirt the network can find on them. Their lives are destabilized. The system is designed to crush the immune response. It punishes the truth before it ever even considers rewarding it.
So bringing it all back to today, when we look at the Epstein case right now, we ask, why hasn't it been fully exposed? Why does it feel like we're still only seeing the tip of the iceberg?
The answer is, well, it's deeply uncomfortable. It's because networks like this are not treated as crimes by the most powerful echelons of society. They are treated as tools of governance, tools of control. When power feels threatened, these are the mechanisms it uses to maintain order and silence threats.
So it's not a malfunction of the system.
It is the operating system.
And history gives us a pretty clear roadmap for what happens next, doesn't it? We're in the post-exposure phase. What does that usually look like?
There's a four-step process that you see time and again. First, a scapegoat is found. In this case, that was Epstein himself. He takes the fall for the collective sins of the entire group.
And as the saying goes, dead men tell no tales.
Exactly. Step two, a narrative freeze occurs. The media moves on to the next shiny object. The official investigation stalls. Key documents are sealed indefinitely, citing national security or personal privacy.
The story just stops.
It's contained. Step three, the victims are either quietly compensated or ignored. Large settlements are paid out, always with ironclad non-disclosure agreements attached. It's about buying silence, once again.
And the final step.
And fourth, the system adapts. It doesn't collapse. It learns from the mistakes that led to the exposure. It tightens security. It moves the operation to a new location under a new name. The goal is always containment and continuation, not accountability and reform.
That is a very heavy realization, but I think it's a necessary one if we want to actually understand the world we're living in.
You have to take off the rose-colored glasses. The final reality check is this. The Epstein case did not reveal something new. It simply revealed something ancient that never went away. It's the Roman Forum, it's Venetian canals, it's Cold War Berlin, just with better surveillance tech and faster jets.
But you have to think there's a difference today. Something has changed, hasn't it?
There is one major crucial difference. The public senses it now. Digital records, flight logs, emails, photos make total denial much, much harder. You can't just burn a server the way you could burn a stack of incriminating letters in a fireplace.
And trust is at an all-time low.
Trust in all of these institutions is eroding. People are asking the very questions we've been discussing today. And that's why this story, unlike others, will not simply disappear. The veil has been torn, and it's proving very, very difficult to stitch back together.
And that's where we find ourselves, standing in the wreckage of this modern blackmail network, but finally recognizing the ancient ruins that lie just beneath the surface. It really does change how you read the news.
Once you see the formula access, indulgence, compromise, control, you start to see it shattered everywhere. It truly is the skeleton key to understanding a certain kind of elite behavior.
We are going to wrap it up there for today. We have covered an immense amount of ground from the Caesars all the way to the Southern District of New York. This is a heavy topic, and we really appreciate you taking the time to walk through this history with us.
It's a history worth knowing.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation, and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video. We do read those comments, and they absolutely shape where this deep dive goes next. Until then, keep asking questions.
And stay curious.